Boy, I hope today's stream goes a lot better than yesterday's. It's going to be a fun one today. I wanted to do something different for today's stream. I wanted to kind of take a trip back memory lane and really go down my journey because it's very different from most other people. And I saw a video today by Theo3G where he kind of goes over why he doesn't use Linux and how he used to. And there was a lot of really surprising facts about that stream where he used to be like hardcore into Linux and then really into using Windows all the time. And fun fact, he actually replied to a tweet of mine today and said, "Oh yeah, well I still use Windows probably half the time for some things." And I was like, "Okay, fair enough." And I wanted to kind of go down my journey because a lot of people either know me as the Linux guy or hell, the guy that makes Windows better or debloated, which I love all that. Yeah, that's cool. But my beginnings are much, I'd say, a lot more humble than most when it comes to. I never really went to college. I kind of went to college. I'll pull up my resume and we'll walk through that. And there's a lot of other things but I never went to like a 4-year college. It was always just kind of like a community college kind of thing. And just kind of thrown into the workforce around the year 2000. And 2000 was not the best year to jump into the workforce, but honestly, it's nothing compared to what you guys are dealing with if you're in your 20s. Coming into this past 10, 15 years, I couldn't imagine trying to jump in the workforce with the modern things from COVID to the housing crash in the late 2000s to many of these other things that I was kind of insulated from because I already had a good body of work and experience. But it did not start out that way. So I kind of wanted to go back to the beginning. In probably the late 80s is when I started really working and breaking computers, as I'm known as the break it guy. And kind of go through my evolution and how the things I'm good at, the things I'm not good at, the things where I can go from, and then maybe at the end of the stream we might tackle some programming and other things. But I really kind of wanted to tackle this because some people I don't think went through it probably the same way, or maybe you did, and you're like, oh, okay, because a lot of people think of me as, I don't know, oh, you must have this background because you know Linux, or you must have this background because you know Windows. And my journey is a little, maybe odd, maybe normal. I don't know. You be the judge. So we'll get into that here in a second. I would probably use the dev branch of Microwin. I probably should just do a stable release while we're sitting here. And this is kind of a pending title for this journey. I was going to actually earmark this out so I don't get too sidetracked as I always do on these streams. Eventually, I probably should do some kind of video for them, but I'll get into this. This is like the working title or evolution of me, and I'll even pull up a resume and then maybe some old computers and stuff so we can kind of chit chat about that. So it should be pretty fun, and we'll get into that here in a second. But yeah, we're gonna go through that whole thing because it's so interesting. Where a lot of people that I admire in today's content creation realm, honestly, I didn't realize how young many of them are. And then it's like I'm only 42, so I'm not that old. Sometimes when you read my Twitter, I'm like, I'm old, back in my day, but I'm actually pretty young. And at least how I think of it, 42 is pretty young. And but compared in the content creation scheme, there's not very many older people. So I definitely am more in the upper category of age. And a lot of the people I look up to are actually younger than me, which is kind of funny. Chris is older than dirt. Probably for Twitch, you know? Yeah, I couldn't imagine too many people going through. This isn't my CV. I couldn't find my CV. I actually hadn't made a resume in 6 years, 7 years, something like that. And the last time I made a CV was, oh God, I think I just threw it up because a buddy of mine was like, hey man, you got to interview for this job. I'm trying to get some referrals going, and I was like, all right, man. Yeah. So I did them a solid. And we interviewed, and they gave me a pretty good sizable offer, and I still turned it down just because I really enjoy my current gig, which you're about to find out a little more in detail. There's a UK streamer that watches that nearly 50 and over. Man, I love seeing that too. Welcome to Club 45 and feel younger than I really am. All right, Doug Zero. Oh man, we're still young. It's all about how you feel, right? That's what old people say. You know. But I think let's start earmarking this out. Let's talk about the overall tech journey and my journey as a IT professional. I think we can jump into it. Where to begin? When did I start doing tech stuff? And I'd say my first real computer in my house that I was messing around with was this. It was a 286. And the 286, it was an HP 286, all DOS based. And you load it up, I think, like Microsoft Works, not Word, but Works, and a couple little DOS-based stuff that at the time, but a lot of times it was like word processing. Not too much in the game realm of thing back in this era. This would have been late 80s, so I would have been about 7 or 8 when I started messing around with DOS, understanding it. I remember even back then, it's probably some of my very first memories. I loved this, just straight up CLI DOS based. At this time, I think it was DOS 6.22, already pretty much a cooked version of DOS that wasn't complete hot garbage. And then really where I really started being on the computer all the time was the 486 era in the mid 90s. We're going to jump pretty fast through this section just because it's more of a history lesson than anything else. And this was a cool thing because this would have been the DX66, I want to say, the 486 DX66. This was actually Windows 3.1.1 at this time, not Windows 95. Windows 95 could be loaded on this system, but I remember loading it up and going, this runs like a turd. So I immediately switched back to Windows 3.11 just because of the speed. Even back then, I would have been a teenager at this era, I still was kind of obsessed with performance, and 95 just was pretty lackluster with the 486 era. And it wasn't really until like the Pentium 4 era, as soon as the first Pentium 4s came out, these guys were really the things that made it into the next generation. And that's when I went to like probably 98 SE and onward. 95 I tinkered with a little bit, but it wasn't the most compatible rig. And that's what I was like, all right. So, but this is where I really started cutting my teeth, looking at a bunch of different things, figuring out how to optimize Windows. And there was a lot wrong with Windows 98, and I was fixing a lot of computers in the late 90s before even doing anything professional work. But that's kind of like my background as far as that goes. And getting into actual, like at this time when I got to Pentium 4 all the way to like community college, I was just kind of bopping around working at like Blockbuster as an assistant manager. Sam Goody and Suncoast, I was an assistant manager over there too. So this was the last years of my high school career. If you remember all those wonderful nostalgia trips down memory lane, I was doing that at this time. Oh man, Sam Goody. Oh geez, yeah. And this is super nostalgia all the way. And this is not an actual, this CV I just printed off of LinkedIn. So obviously I don't live in Euless anymore. And some of these things are, I'll correct as I go along. But I at least wanted to start where the CV begins on LinkedIn because this is about where most of my tech comes from. And you might see Geek Squad on here. This is actually Best Buy. So I got hired at Best Buy to be in their tech bench at that time. Geek Squad had not been acquired yet. So this would have been 2002, 2003-ish era. And that was my first real kind of tech job. And I got it because I was doing computer sales at Best Buy. And then I got moved into that realm and then quickly went through as I had a good aptitude for fixing computers. So I got promoted like 6 or 7 times in about 5 years. and moved all the way through up to like a field manager of sorts. Notable things is I usually got like most of the celebrities in the Dallas Fort Worth area, went and fixed their computers. I think like Deion Sanders, some Dallas Mavericks guys, which is kind of funny because I don't really watch sports. So a lot of these guys I don't really even know. Chuck Norris, I knew that guy. And like Ralphie Palmero and some other ones. Actually lives not even a mile from me. And yeah, that was kind of a cool era because I got to go into the home and learn a lot about just basic computer repair. But also the big thing was I got put in charge of all the business. Best Buy for Business is what they called it back then. And I was able to go through and basically get put in charge of a whole bunch of different projects, fixing up businesses or creating networks for businesses. So that's kind of a wild time because I was able to build up probably anywhere between 50 and 100 different businesses in various different sectors, from construction to legal to, we had pest control. There was a lot of different things where we went through, and I got to see a bunch of different businesses, how they were maintained. And at that time, I was able to get a ton of experience in those 5 years. And I was pretty good at it because I went from in-home agent to business agent to field manager. And then they were like, hey, Titus, all the other field managers in the area didn't know how to do business or understand the business side of things. And they were kind of prima donnas, a lot of the technicians that did the business computers and servers. So they put me in charge of all of them because I was one of them. And that was kind of a fun experience. So I got to deal with some really crazy disasters. Like I had a business agent break a RAID 5 without checking backups. So note, you can rebuild a RAID 5. It cost at that time in 2000, and I think it was 2007 when this happened. It cost roughly about $15,000 and sent into, I think we were using OnTrack in Minneapolis for that recovery. It took roughly 4 or 5 days, expedited with a ton of money. And then it got it back and recovered about 90-something% of the data from a broken RAID. Not recommended, but kind of cool to see wacky things like that you typically wouldn't run into because people don't do that. Well, maybe people still do really stupid stuff. But I felt like during that era, you did run into some crazy things that I couldn't even imagine doing in today's world, and probably wouldn't see with the advent of most cloud computing. I think most of this is pretty much dead. So yeah, it was a lot for them, but it was fine, and I enjoyed this time. I actually loved this side of things. Most of this is dead now. I don't even think Geek Squad's around anymore. If they are, it's just a shell of its former self because, frankly, it's easier just to throw away a computer than pay a technician to repair a computer these days. So it's kind of wild. People still do stupid things, but the stupid things have just evolved. I agree. I agree with that. I think that's a good way to put it. What do you think of consultant companies? I don't understand consultants. Sometimes it's needed, especially if you're unfamiliar with line of business applications. Consultants can be good. I've had some good interactions with consultants. I can think of one for a really specific niche line of business legal application that tracked a bunch of hours and calendar entries and finances. It was called like LexisNexis, and I had a really wonderful consultant on that job, and it was really nice because that software was very niche and not very much online information was about it. So consultants can be good when it's a really niche implementation. However, hiring a business consultant just to look at your overall business or something like that, that seems silly to me. I don't understand that. But when you need certain specializations that aren't in your wheelhouse, I could see a consultant being good. More often than not, though, most consultants are worthless and a huge waste of money. So that's I've run the gamut on it. I've had a good experience with a consultant, but also I've seen some businesses throw a ton of money away on consultants on more general things that you need to figure out how to do that in house before going through it. Specifically, there was I walked into. We'll get to it here in a second. Actually, we'll just keep going here. Data technologist was kind of a fancy because that's going to be up here, but I'll talk about that. Let me just put a pin in it and we'll revisit bad consulting. But good consulting, honestly, when I was an IT manager right here, that was not bad at all. So I was talking about people being in the company outsourcing from a consultant. Talking about people being in the company outsourcing from a consultant. I'm not sure what you mean there, Tim. Or, yeah. He's just going to yap the whole stream? Maybe. Yeah, last stream was an absolute disaster. But this stream, I thought we'd start it off with, hey, here's my background. And then we go from there. In community college, I did forget to mention, I did take C++, and throughout high school, or even earlier than that, did a lot of C++. So I think we had like object-oriented programming and computer concepts and other just junk courses in here during that period of time. Probably should have highlighted a little more. But this right here, this 6 months, was another contract job. I got put into a bunch of different businesses, and one of those businesses ended up hiring me. So they basically poached me. They're like, hey, we really like you. We want to pay you to be here 40 hours a week. And that was this business. Oh, no. Actually, it was the consultant for another business. So I did get poached. And funny enough, now that I was misremembering it, it was 16 years ago. But I was actually at a different law firm. It was a PI firm. And they were a client of mine. And I actually met them back at Geek Squad. I helped, I think, recover this. And then I left. And then someone from Geek Squad went in, completely screwed something up. Somehow they forgot to put air conditioning in the server room, and they couldn't figure out why the server kept crashing. And I went in, I remember when I was here, and printing out the BIOS logs. And I was like, well, you're having about 1,000 overheat events. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, it's too hot in here. And that is why it was, because I remember popping off the side of that server for that firm. And it almost, I want to say it almost looked like someone sprayed something in there where it looked like the silicone was like melting, because it was over the course of many months. And the room was like 100 degrees because it's Texas. And I don't know how it was missed that entire thing. So I was like, just leave the server room door open for the day and see if you have any problems. And as soon as they did that, all the problems went away. I'm like, okay, great. Well, let's just get an air conditioning unit for in here and we'll replace it all. At the time, I think it was an HP server, and I called them up, and they had actually a pretty good warranty repair. I think it was like a 4-hour warranty repair that went through pretty darn fast. And yeah, that was, they were out in several hours and almost replaced the whole main board and got everything back up and going. That was a really good experience, actually. But anyways, that firm, the consultant for LexisNexis from this firm tied me in and said, hey, this firm wants someone good, and they asked me, and he actually just gave me the referral. So that was how I got tied into there. I got this job because of, as a field manager over here, I worked with another consultant, believe it or not, and he became their CTO for this company. And then he direct hired me and pulled me over from here. So it was just like a ton of different referrals. Come to think of it, oh, no, I actually got recruited here. So I was about to say, I think every job I've had in the past 20-something years has been just people I used to work with. So anyways, I digress, get a little lost. I did get this great experience, had a ton of different businesses in and out, learning a lot of different systems, networking, And it was a great time. And I still have lots of connections of people I met during this era because I was just in so many different places. Oh, thanks, Iron. Yeah, hence networking matters, both physical networking and then also people networking. So I got hired here, and this is actually it's gone through a bunch of different names. It's no longer named this, and I've been off and on with them for a while. They had a split sometime in the 2013, about over 10 years ago now. And when that happened, the business got cut in half, meaning half the people went and started a new business, and then half the people stayed. And when that happened, the owner of this business is like, hey, Titus, I kind of want to cut back on, I don't really need you here full time anymore. But her husband ran this, Squire Tech Solutions, which was disaster recovery. So they did a whole bunch of government contracts, a bunch of asterisks and free PBX work with telephony boxes. So I actually got to be a lead engineer for them, kind of fell into this role and was able to build out a bunch of different telephony boxes to go into these remote trailers. So we did remote 911 setups. We did just remote field phones through satellite. There was some hospitals that were set up. We even had a nuclear power plant that I built a PBX box for. So kind of a cool era. I loved this because it was a whole different feel, a whole different skill set, and I felt real privileged to work for them. And I loved the owner here where I worked directly with. It was just so much fun because we were able to he was like, hey, we need to make this work. We need a VPN to go through a satellite. And at the time, VPN through satellite wasn't very good. A lot of times it would break. So we ended up getting like proprietary boxes. I think they were called like bandits that like stripped out part of the packet. I think it was part of the UDP packet. And then it was able to establish the VPN and then assemble the packet over here so that the VPN wouldn't lose connection. So it was kind of wild, some of the solutions we were able to come up with, but he was constantly getting these really cool contracts that required a lot of a unique mind and a different solution. So it was always a fun job to go into. So I was actually working for both these at the same time. I was going here a couple days a week, and then I'd put in like my little engineer hat 3 days a week and then do that. And that was so much fun. I loved working for both of these companies, and it was just an immense pleasure and something I actually looked forward to when we had these weird situations. And this is really where I cut a lot of my teeth with Linux servers, because almost everything was built with CentOS for Linux, which is fun. How much money did you get after you removed a bunch of Dave Plummer's malware, by the way? Well, the malware, this was back in the Geek Squad era when I was doing like residential stuff. This would have been when Dave was putting a lot of the malware on people's computers and distributing that out. So I saw his software often. It was pretty prominent back in the early 2000s. So much so that as soon as I saw the screenshots, I was like, oh my God, I have removed that at least 100 times from a lot of his shareware / malware. And that was kind of wild back in this era. So yes, I do remember his piece of software, and it was malware. It was not there was no benefit to any of that software. I can tell you right now, if those software did anything, typically it was just a really basic regedit that could have been done even back then. He can't even come back to this and say that my software did stuff that other software didn't. That's a load of hogwash. That's not how that worked at all. Even back then, there was plenty of other stuff, because I think like his internet cleaner was, they actually there was Spybot. There was a lot of other one, Adaware. I remember back then, there was a lot of immunization things back in this era. I could go into like a huge rant about different malware and stuff from this era, because I did see a lot of it from that time. But anyways, this was kind of what I did here. I was able to just design stuff mainly for a law firm, and this was much more low-key, chill job. Loved it. The engineer was really kind of a fun bit too. And that kind of brings me to this. This was probably my step out into the big dog kind of realm, because SWS at the time merged with Eagle Environmental. And you might know these companies, might not, but they did the cleanup for Deepwater Horizon. I think it was the oil spill that happened in this era. Deepwater Horizon oil spill. It would have been around this era, and they had a huge boon. There was a multi-year cleanup that they were kind of a part of for this massive oil spill. So I did a lot of the tech behind the scenes of this and got to kind of clean up a lot of their data centers, revamped their storage, moved all their on-prem email in the matter of about 5 days over into O365, redid all their Windows servers. Oh man, just everything bottom to top was able to revamp in that 6-month period of time. At that time, they were kind of stuck and saw a lot of churn because of some mismanagement that happened. They've since been acquired, and they have gone. I think they're something completely different nowadays, which is kind of nice. So that's kind of it. Are you a game dev? No. The only game I think I've ever made was back in the 90s, and that would have been like you probably remember this, QBasic. Oh, actually, we can probably do it online. I redid this in C++. If you remember this game, let's see if we can't do it. Oh, is it going to allow it? All right, let's see. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. Default 3. And then play game. And then you'd sit like your angle. So this would be like a 65, and then your velocity of like 50. And you'd sit there, and I would code this completely different, and you can kind of get a feel for, okay, probably velocity 150 or something. So this one would probably be like a 60, and probably, let's go 120 for the velocity. And then you'd set this up, and I did this in C++, and it was much cleaner than the old QBasic side of things, but a fun project, but pretty much the only thing I've ever done. And from a gaming perspective, I never really was much for game dev. I mean, it's a whole different ball game nowadays, where everything was built from the ground up back then. But it was a fun time. So that's about it from my perspective. From that, going through my versions of setup, I kind of want to walk through that too. So now you kind of got a basic feel for like my resume and background. Let's actually talk about like my journey of operating systems, because everybody's looks a little different. And I think this is probably really interesting to see how workstations have kind of evolved over the years. I would say going from DOS, and during this era, learning all the commands. Actually, let me just start a new one. Let's go here. I would say DOS, I had learned most of the DOS commands. You had like autoexec.bat and other things for launching win.exe. This was Windows 3.1 era as well. Most of this time would have been mid 90s, I would say. And then it really, Windows itself, like Windows 95 was late 90s. Windows, probably 98 really was when I was using it. Like a 98 SE I was on from, let's put dates here. I would say 1999 to probably 2000 era. So only about a year or two, maybe 98 actually. I think I bought it at the get-go and had a first edition, and then finally got the second edition later on. Yeah, AutoExec was married to config.sys. So that was kind of like my start to it. And most of this right here, I just did like Microsoft Word, maybe some basic DOS games back in these days, but it really wasn't until like the 98 era that really things took off. Back in this time, I was actually gaming with Quake 2 quite often. I was on the OGL, which they didn't have like professional gamers back then. Online gaming league. Is that still a thing? OGL? I think it's a whole different thing. The OGL.com, I think is what it was. The OGL.com. Entered in some tournaments, didn't win very much. I think during Team CTF back then, I ended up winning maybe $1,000. Still a lot for me at the time, but yeah, back then this was kind of cool. But that was my 98 SE era. We did dial-up gaming at this time, so it was dial-up 56K, which actually was like 33K. Was usually what the connection was. So when people say, oh, you don't understand, I got a slow DSL connection, I was like, man, I wish I had DSL back then. So you had, OGL changed to PGL. Good to know. I predate that. So I kind of fell out of that here in a little bit. I'll get into my XP era, which is kind of funny. You can use it offline. You can use Excel Draw on Obsidian and other things. But the 56K, the problem was not necessarily the connection speed. Yes, I know 33K, which is roughly 0.03 megabytes up, and the down was 0.03 megabytes. The up was like 5K or something silly. So it was like 0.005K up. Kids these days don't understand the struggle of this right here when it comes to dial-up. When I connect over even a meg, it's like, oh, well, this isn't so bad. Everything's better than what this was back in this day. So you had dial-up. Gaming was Quake 2. Learning more on like regedits. 98 still launched DOS. That kind of fell into this. It started to replace the DOS, where 95, I want to say, launched into DOS and then ran WinExe, kind of. And then 98 really kind of replaced the booting to DOS and actually had its own bootloader. I remember that, I can see it in my brain, the whole starting screen when you had like a dirty shutdown kind of pops in my head. I remember seeing that a lot during this era with dirty shutdowns, which was bad. You didn't really see any viruses so much in the 98, maybe like the I love you virus. I want to say that was a thing. I might have saw that a couple times, but really during this era, you really didn't see too much. It is safe to turn off your computer now. Oh gosh, I remember that too. So this was the late 90s. I learned quite a bit about just kind of inner workings of Windows, but really a lot of the love and kind of the golden era of Windows for me was probably Windows 2000 Workstation. We're not going to mention SE or ME. I mean, that was just pure awful. So Workstation was kind of cool. I loved 2000 Workstation. It was a very, very well designed. It's NT kernel based. And to this day, when ME was its own thing. So there was actually a business side to Microsoft and a residential side. ME was the residential side, and it was based on its like own kernel, which was kind of crap. It was like the spinoff of 98, and 2000 was an NT kernel, and really cool. This was one of my first forays to actually working in business. Was 2000 Workstation with Windows 2000 Server, which I actually really enjoyed both of these. They were great, and it was a fun time during this era. I was kind of in college a little bit, working a ton. I was spending a lot of time on the computer, though. This, I would say, after high school, I graduated in 2000, and I was on computers probably at this point in time, I would say easily 8+ hours a day. And then I would say the golden era that many people have rose-colored glasses looking back at is the Windows XP era. This kind of went on for a while. I'd say 2003 all the way to like 2009, because Vista really wasn't used, especially in the gaming realm of things, because everything was kind of XP. XP was so much lighter weight than Vista that even people that had beefy computers like me still absolutely loved XP because, well, one, it was super vulnerable. You got tons of viruses. But the thing that you don't know is, as a computer tech, the era of money printing. If you had a computer shop or you did computer work, everyone got infected during this era. Microsoft was fully incompetent when they made Windows XP, and it was so unsecure that it was just a complete heyday for any computer tech, where if you had a whole bunch of computer shops pop up everywhere. You had the Geek Squad that really boomed during this era. You had just everybody and anybody had a computer repair business that knew how to repair computers, because I remember going into homes and fixing up 3-4 computers at a time. All of them would get infected. Each one was like $200, $250 a pop. So an easy $1,000, and it would take me a couple hours. And that's kind of insane. Looking back on it, I'm like, that's kind of a wild way, a wild west for the Windows XP era. And you had some good computer techs that kind of did a good job of cleaning things up. I'd like to think I was one, but also some that were fully incompetent, and I usually had to go back and clean up on the recall. So I would go back in after certain techs had problems removing certain viruses and not properly cleaning computers. So a great era. I have fond memories of it. It was fun, but a lot of people remember the XP era and forget how many viruses it had. It was just wild how many were in existence. So yeah, during this, I played, my game of choice for gaming was EverQuest. That EverQuest 1 was my jam. I loved it all throughout this entire era. So great. Then came what most people probably know, the Windows 7 era. And this ran for me pretty much 2009 to 2016. 7 was actually a really good comp. It was actually probably the most successful, I would say the most successful OS Microsoft probably has ever produced. It wasn't necessarily secure, but it wasn't as awful as XP was. And it wasn't as bucky as Vista was, because most people got into it. So 7 era is kind of a tricky thing, because during this period of time, I kind of already had a good stable job. I was no longer going into a whole bunch of different companies and different computers. So at this point in time, I just ran Windows 7. I really didn't do too much, except when I got the lead engineer job. That's when kind of things changed. That's when really a big thing. Gaming was actually still EverQuest back in. I mean, I played that game forever. But I would say the Linux era for me here. Let's go. Let's continue. The Linux, I would say, let's call this the CentOS server era. And that was probably 2013 to 2016. And this one was when I really, going into the nuts and bolts, learned a lot of Linux CLI commands, and really kind of kitted out and started to dive into the nuts and bolts of navigating Linux, how Linux is constructed, mostly from CentOS, understanding like SELinux, some of the more complex things, understanding at that time the EFI and UEFI installs were kind of coming out, and I had to repair a couple systems because a lot of our telephony boxes would get improperly shut down, because most of them were just regular old Joes that get out there and then just power off things directly. So it's kind of an interesting era. I loved this, but I didn't actually use Linux for a desktop. This was all server-based stuff, and it really kind of piggybacking on this, I would say Debian Linux during this Debian Ubuntu server era was probably 2016 for me too. So when I got that big job as an IT director, we had issues with a huge thing was monitoring. So most people would go with, oh geez, there's a lot of different monitoring that you can do, but it's like obscenely expensive. So what we ended up doing was like a Nagios implementation, FOSS implementation, where we'd write these specific config files and then be pinging different things. And that was cool. That was cool. So I did like a Nagios setup during this era. We also set up like basic dev environments because we were rolling our own. We had a database guy, and we were rolling like our own CRM system. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember I think it was another FOSS solution. So it was kind of a neat era where I kind of got to see a bunch of different FOSS stuff where we were having a lot of fun of 2016, and that was cool. So I learned a lot during this era. And even though I don't have real fond memories of 2016 because I was just working all the time, most weeks I was putting 80 to 100 hours in. It was pretty bad. So, it was kind of wild. But during this, with that job, I was also pulling in revenue wise. I was pulling in a base of like 145,000 and KPIs, KPI bonuses of about 10% of that. So roughly 160,000 during this 6-month period of time. So that's with no college diploma or nothing, just kind of seeing my background. This is kind of how it evolved from an operating standpoint. But as soon as I got into this, where I was going in between like Windows 7 and Linux and really having a good breadth of experience at this point in time and being able to implement that in really big business and do all these systems in-house, I was able to get paid pretty well. And for not having any education really other than just experience. That's kind of nice. So past this, I would say it wasn't really, if anything of note. I would say most of everything, 2018 really is when things really kind of went on. The YouTube era, I'll call this. And I'd say all the way from 2019 to 2021, I 100%ed used Linux for everything. And I do mean everything. I was doing all of my video recording. I was editing all my videos. I did the Arch Drunk install. I did everything Linux desktop. This was Linux desktop all the time. So you had everything on you could possibly think of on here. And it was so cool, but I kind of lost track of myself during this era because, one, I still had a little bit of a day job. I had downsized myself by quite a margin and was still kind of working 1 or 2 days a week. Actually 2018 all the way to 2020, I'd say I was still working about 5 days a week. And it was sometime in 2020, right after COVID hit and kind of everybody kind of squished down. That's when I was like, well, hey guys, I'm cool. Let me just go down to like 2 days a week, 3 days a week. And then it wasn't until like, we'll get to that here in a second, like kind of like the new era that happened from this. But the thing that I didn't appreciate, and the thing about using Linux 100% of the time, is some things took me a lot longer to do in Linux because it wasn't as good. That was something that took me a long time to get to. Using Kdenlive for video editing was insane. I was doing over 100 videos. I did actually 500 YouTube videos in Kdenlive. What is that? That's stupid. That is ridiculous. Yes, Kdenlive is great for a noob or someone that's just starting out. But after some point in time, you got to realize Kdenlive, not great. It's fine for what it is, but it is not a professional video editor. And I could never go back to doing Kdenlive videos. Videos that took 1 hour in Kdenlive, I can now do in 5 minutes in like FCP or Resolve. Now, obviously, I already hear the Linux guys yelling in chat, hey, Resolve works on Linux. Yeah, but not as good as Windows. And it's not feature parity. So looking back on this, I really wish after those first 100 videos in Kdenlive, I switched to Resolve. So the skill issue here was not accepting the change. Now, the funny thing about this, and this is where most people will probably have their jaw hit the floor, where you'll be like, Titus, you're off your rocker. You've lost it. GIMP, I hated the first 60 days. But now, I cannot live without. I don't know what's wrong with me, but something in GIMP and forcing myself to use it for 2 years has been completely bonkers, where this whole section is kind of an insane take. Like when you go into this, I go into Windows, I go into Mac or any other operating system, instead of actually using Photoshop or Infinity Photo, which is probably what you should be using, right? I don't like it as much as just GIMP. I've gotten so used to all the muscle memory in GIMP that I got it going. I already looked at Affinity. I've already used the custom line spins. I'm going to let you in a secret. These YouTubers are lying to you. It's not stable. It's a terrible experience. You need to use Windows or Mac if you want to use Affinity. Now, I want to pull that up. Let's just pull it up real fast just to kind of see. Because I guarantee you, he's going to grab, I think it was Warrior Wine Spin. Let's see what he's using. Yeah, Elemental Warriors Wine Fork. I already could call it right here. It doesn't work for crap. Yes, it makes for a good YouTube video. Yes, you're going to get some views. Yes, there's going to be some Linux chads out there that are like, Affinity works in Linux. It does not work on a daily basis. There's been a new dev update recently. Yeah. I'm just saying, when I tried it a month ago, I went through it with a fine-tooth comb. I could get it all working. I could use it, kind of, but it was an awful experience. One that I know you can't do it. So that's my rant on Affinity. Try it now. Well, maybe we try it here in a second, because I mean, I still have the license for Affinity, and I always encourage, I immediately threw money at Affinity Photo. Anybody that's a Photoshop replacement, I just go buy, because I hate Adobe in all Photoshop. So anytime I can, I will use the alternative. So we might look at some Affinity Photo here in a second, because if you're saying it's good, I would love to. I'd love to see it. I'd love to go that way. I think the YouTube era, let's just take this back to probably 2022. That's when I was like really, really into YouTube. I think let's go 2022 to present. I don't know what era we're in now. This kind of brings us up to date. Honestly, let's just go 2024. Let's just say present day. Let's say that's 2023 and 24 to present. The programming era is what we're going to call that. And this is kind of an interesting era that I love. It's something that I have kind of fallen in love with. It's the WinUtil Windows Toolbox development. That has been so much fun. Making everything in here has been kind of insane. I have loved it. So many cool things, and seeing all the people know and tweet at me, it's such a better, more rewarding experience than anything in social media, whether it's Twitch streaming or YouTube. I like the programming so much better because it actually helps people in such a huge way where the YouTube videos couldn't. Where I know when people use my Windows toolbox or utility, it makes for a better Windows experience. Experience. If I can spell experience. I think I still misspelled it. Oh well. Moving on. That has been amazing. And I have loved it. Yeah. So the streaming era. Yeah, I think that's probably where we go. Like this is probably programming / streaming era. I would say kind of moving into that. Having chat give real-time feedback has been amazing for instant returns. So like if I make something or I'm saying something and then you got some feedback, I can get it immediately, which is great. And I love that because we can try out more stuff, or I could have someone in chat go, "Hey, Titus, you don't know what you're talking about. You need to be doing Affinity Photo or whatever it might be." That's cool. I love that. But when I'm programming as well, you also get other people that have been programming for longer, which is pretty much anybody that knows anything about programming, because I've been programming for a couple months, really. I don't consider really the Windows toolbox to be much of a programming. That's more of a script, where the Linux toolbox, which we started last month with Linutil, Linux toolbox, you got some Rust, Bash, where this over here, this is PowerShell. And the Rust Bash kind of development has been so much fun. And I would say the learning capabilities that we've got here has been the best. And I think the big thing that I see with most of my setup and kind of reorienting this, and I started this stream out kind of getting inspired by what Theo did with his video on why he uses Mac, which there's plenty to make fun of using Mac a lot, but I got the entire gist of the video. He stopped using Linux desktop because of one reason and one reason only. Now, obviously, everyone's going to yell skill issue. But the big thing about this, I would say, let's say we have, let's just come down here and let's make a new one. Let's go large, just to emphasize this. What works? That is probably the biggest thing that is lost on most users. What works for you? And for me, what is the best solution for everything? That's what I'm obsessed with now. What can make me program faster? What can make me learn more? And for me, Linux. What is Linux good for? DWM, Xorg. That's simple and never breaks. Nothing ever changes. It's very consistent experience. I can launch everything. I can go over here. I can pull up my web browser. I can pull up Windows. Doesn't matter. We got it all right here at the push of a button. I can pull up a new web browser, come back. There's nothing more simple, nothing faster than that. And I never have to worry about an update screwing me. That's what works, but it's not good for everything. What do I use Windows for? Windows. Well, incompatible hardware, Elgato, and certain programming, or certain programs. I'm trying to think of any programs that I use. Resolve being a big one, actually. I actually say like Resolve. Now, you might be thinking, Titus, wait a second. Don't you have DaVinci Resolve on your Linux? Yeah, I do. Well, does it not launch? No, it launches. It works well. Okay. So is it slower than Windows? No, it's not. It's actually faster than Windows. So what's the problem? Why are you going inside and doing it in there and not out here on your Linux box? Just a couple little things that got it. Now, some people are already going, well, AAC codecs, that's actually a good thing, right? Well, guess what? I already switched from AAC to Opus. So that's actually not a problem. I've already got circumvented around that. Feature parity with Resolve is one of my biggest sticking points with this entire program. I don't know what it is, but it's driving me up a wall. Let me just download this, by the way, because when I go to open, let's just open another project. We'll open a past project. Let's open a recent project, finishing MicroWin. So here's this video, roughly about 3 hours. And what I'll like to do is, like, let's say I pull it over into here. A lot of times I want to just come to YouTube, and then in YouTube, I like to audio normalize. And then I also like to do just a basic upload to my workflow, where it auto updates and submits and creates the video all on YouTube. It's there in Windows. It is not there in Linux. You might be thinking, that's a pretty small thing. What the hell, Titus? Gets us back to our original point. What works better, Windows or Linux in Resolve? Windows. It's Windows by a good margin. It has better codec support. And frankly, the auto upload feature is crazy. It's just so much better. And then just some normalization that happens at the end. Now, that's the final normalization. Someone asked about Fairlight. I usually have a Fairlight preset if you look at my bus bar. So what I usually do is I pull in my tracks. I have a background, I have ducking, and then I usually just go into like a preset like here, come into like this one, and then I usually just apply this. So then it adds a little bit of a compressor with a soft knee, brings up the volume. So it fixes all my audio here, but then for the final normalization when uploading with certain loops, that so all the videos sound exactly the same, that is also done in this realm. Which maybe under the advanced settings, just looks a lot different on Linux, but I don't see it. And so normalization on a video upload would be nice. Also having the auto upload would be also nice. Having better codec support like AAC would also be ideal. So I'm not using Opus, but I actually like Opus better. So yeah, Resolve is better in Windows. And that's not necessarily Linux's fault. It isn't. It's just Elgato or DaVinci made Resolve better in Windows. Elgato made their devices work in Windows without any thought to Linux. So it's not Linux's fault. It's just what works better. And Windows does work better in this regard. So that's where I use Windows compared to it. And that's why my journey is kind of like half split between Linux and Windows. And if we're being 100% honest here, like if we just take off the guise of other people staring at me, what do I feel like between the two? Like when I'm over here, and did Windows not launch? Windows probably crashed because it's Windows. Come on. Oh, there it goes. When I'm over here and I'm messing around in Windows, I still like this sometimes. So when I'm in Linux and then when I'm in Windows, I like this back and forth. Something in me doesn't like choosing a specific operating system. At the end of the day, what works better for you? What gets you the most results is the biggest thing. For me, this really basic Linux setup where I don't even use a desktop environment, just DWMXorg. It's simple, never breaks. And then my debloated Windows. I'm able to code both the WinUtil and Linux util because I use both. And I love that going back and forth between the two. And I think that's where I've ended up, where I'm like, I love this. And that's kind of my history of like operating system, how I landed on all this, why I've gone from DOS, Windows, Mac, Linux. And frankly, when we got this YouTube era, there was honestly a little bit of a Mac bit in here because I really didn't talk about Mac. In the 2008 era, it would have been 2007, 2008, I got certified in Macintosh, mostly from the Mac OS using Intel, and Mac actually paid, I think, Best Buy at the time, and I got flown out to Minneapolis to get all that directly from Mac people. So I got certified, and I think it was like OS X Tiger or some crap. And then I had a Hackintosh during the early 2010s, and kind of had a little bit of a Hackintosh era in here. So I had Windows 7 and Mac Hackintosh, which was a lot of fun. And then during the YouTube era, I made some like open core videos and stuff about Hackintoshes. And during the 2022 and 2023, for about 2 years, I used FCP. So for Mac, I had 2022 to 2023, FCP was my editor, and it was good. It was a really good editor. I loved Final Cut Pro. It just didn't feel like they are actually evolving it. And then Resolve just came in. It was like just the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room, where it just did everything better, and it keeps getting better, where Final Cut Pro has not really changed much. So it's interesting. And the thing, what made me use the Mac was simply the $800 Mac Mini. The 800 Mac Mini was actual good value for once out of Mac and Apple. Apple usually just does not have good value, and it's just expensive crap is what I usually look at. Whenever I see the hardware and I look at the price, I look at the specs, it can't help it. And I look and I'm like, this is pretty awful. And the Mac Mini was an exception to that rule. I looked at the Mac Mini, I looked at the M1 chip when it came out, and I was like, wow, actually, let me go buy that. And I did, and I got my money's worth out of it because I was using Final Cut Pro, and it was great. So my little Mac stint professionally really was only this bit. I did repair some Macs and some other stuff, but not really of anything of note. It was only really these 2 years where I had basically a triple boot situation going on, where I had Mac for my video editing, I had Windows for just some this and that, and not really using too much on the recording side. I want to say after when I did the Mac, I switched to Windows for recording, and then I had Linux at that time. I think I was doing mostly Linux videos. So that was kind of an insane era right here, because I was bouncing around just trying everything for going everywhere. And, during the YouTube era, I made a lot of mistakes, I'd say. I split my audience a lot too during this bit, where I was just more obsessed about, oh, what's the new shiny thing, or what can I learn from this? And then I'd make a video about pretty much anything and everything, where, at that time, I should have just stuck with one thing. If I wanted to be just like a professional YouTuber, which I don't. I don't think I ever wanted just 100% YouTube. That's never something I really want to do. I love YouTube videos. I love making YouTube videos, but to me, it should always be more of a side hustle than an actual profession. I feel like it's just better that way, where if you try to do it 100%, which I've done many rants on this, I'm not going to harp on. I think you have to do your sponsors, you have to do all that stuff, and to me, it's just not very much fun. Well, so here's the thing. Like, when it comes to YouTube and being successful on YouTube, the more divided your audience is, people come to a channel, whatever YouTube channel you follow, you go to that channel, and they're usually known for one or two things. And you typically subscribe to that channel for that thing. And when that person stops talking about that thing, you unsubscribe. It's just the nature of the beast. That's why most YouTube channels, think of them like TV shows. They have a certain formula. They regurgitate that formula over and over and over again. Usually the average lifespan's about a year or two per audience member, if you're good at it. And then they get tired of you and they move on. And that's typically how YouTube works. It's a cruel thing, but I think looking at it from a creator standpoint, most people just don't care about the person. It's more about the content. And that's, my thought process behind it. I'm sure there's some people that care about it, but it's mostly you subscribe to YouTube videos for a specific thing, and it's very niche down. There's some that break this mold for sure, but typically those are some amazing personalities. And that's kind of cool. Just my thought process. Have you fully recovered from yesterday's fun? Man, I gotta say, yeah, it's been kind of wild on that. I'm a little bit hesitant to jump back in, but I'm feeling a lot better today. I think we can. Whatever happened to Luke Smith? Luke Smith went the crypto route. I think he made his bag in like Monero and some other things, and he just went full crypto. So, which makes sense. I mean, doing Linux content on YouTube, there's not much money in that. So that's what happened to Luke Smith. He might pop back up in a while. Was it? It's been years. He usually would do these weird rants out in the forest and stuff. And old Luke, he's wild. Yeah, I miss him too. He was a different cat for sure. Archon, thank you for the 2 months, tier 1. All right, man. Yeah, I'm not into crypto either. Well, there's just too many scams in that. That's why I was like, I will never talk publicly about crypto at all, especially after this last round where everybody got scammed. So, what are we going to do today? I wanted to just kind of talk about this, and I was like, oh, this would be a fun trip down memory lane, kind of showing all this, but what are we going to do today? First off, let's look at WinUtil PRs, and then go to LinUtil. I want to just see if that one PR, I want to say OG did send it. And when we ended the stream yesterday, I think, yeah, here it was. Reopening PR 24 plus some modifications to make PR merge easily without any problem. Okay. So this was one of them. Oh, we need to do the stable release of MicroWin. Yeah. Let me do that real fast. Let's come on over here. Let's go releases. Before I go crazy, let's first switch this to stable MicroWin release. Because I've used this quite a bit now, and I can tell you it's stable. So we're just going to change this to release stable MicroWin ISO. We're going to go from a pre-release, set this to latest, update, and that's just a very small one. The big bulk of the MicroWin was the release before this. We were just fixing a small breakage there. So this is the stable MicroWin release. We'll push that before doing any big refactor. Thank you for yelling at me about that. Still have PR 2618. Let's see that. Let's go 2618. How many on LinUtil too? Let's pull that up. Jeez, 30 PRs in both. Find remote jobs. Yeah, I don't know on IT jobs, man. When it comes to remote jobs, IT, I'm more of the infrastructure guy where it's all hands-on. So I mainly just rack and stack everything. And I'm not in with like big companies or anything these days. Okay. Yeah, I've actually noticed the slowdown too on the job market. Most people, I want to say, it's been actually pretty gradual over many years now. There was a huge drop off in 2020, followed by a big swing up. And after like the government injected just trillions of dollars into the economy and blew up everything. And now everybody's like falling off and having the hangover from that. So I imagine we'll have a next couple of years that'll be a little rough in the job market for here in the US. At least that's what I'm seeing here in Texas. Windows are developed by a bunch of crackheads just format and make Clover using BD8 US. Windows can be just as stable as Linux in a lot of ways to me, especially from a desktop perspective. I used to say that Linux desktop is, I think there's a myth saying Linux desktop is more stable. I would say it depends on each configuration. Both can be true. So when we look at Windows and we look at Linux desktop from a stock configuration compared to a stock configuration of Windows desktop, I'm talking like Ubuntu desktop or something just out of the gate, right? It's an awful experience. I said it. It's awful. There's a couple times where it's really good experience, and that is Steam Deck. Steam Deck is great. Talk about the user experience that users deserve. Steam delivered. That is an amazing Linux desktop / stable user experience. Now, even when it comes to Debian and Arch, most users will break their systems. I know this is a little controversial take, but it is true. Windows, you could argue stock-wise, is a lot more stable than the stock version of Linux. And that's true because really there's not much in way of configuration of Windows, and most people know Windows. So now it becomes, let's add some nuance to this. My version of Windows, I would say, is probably more stable than my Linux desktops. Skill issue, right? I already hear it. Come on, spam skill issue at me. I said it. But as a guy that has done IT professionally for a long, long time, skill issue. Yeah, get good, scrub. But the thing is, Windows is way more stable for me in a lot of instances than Linux. Now, having said that, I do a lot of shenanigans on my Linux install, and I bring it upon myself. So it isn't a very stable experience. It's because I can break my system in Linux, where a lot of times Windows won't let you just quite go crazy. They won't let you go ham a lot of times. So that's where I'm like, Windows a lot of times is actually better for some people comparative to the Linux desktop experience. Not always. And there's some Linux desktop experiences which are just second to none. And we're setting into a new era of Linux desktop. So what I just said might not be true here in a couple of years. When we run into immutable distributions, we have a lot of different configurations that just don't simply break when the user does something stupid and you have the skill issue. But right now, Windows is actually probably more stable. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. I love Linux way better than Windows, and I love to trash Windows. But my Windows, well, I configure it to where, heck, I think even this crappy VM that I've tried to blow up a bunch, right? Is this broken now? We need to install. You know what we're gonna do? I know what we're gonna do today. We got to reinstall Looking Glass because this thing just keeps locking up on me. It's just driving me crazy. Yeah. Alexor, we're going to be doing some Looking Glass updates today because this thing keeps locking up and it's driving me crazy. Damn it. Linux and it's just unstable. It's unstable. Gosh, Linux. But where else can you really do all of this virtualization with PCI pass-through and all these shenanigans I'm doing? Well, you really can't do it on any other operating system. That's where Linux just is so much better. It never happened, man. There's still, as much as, like, Windows is like that, I don't know. I just love it. I love to hate it. And I couldn't imagine my life without Windows in it. It would just be far too boring. So that's kind of my thought process there. Let's see. All right. Back in Windows. I don't know. I like this. Sometimes I like it. Other times when it locks up and it's that. But the whole point of this is, when did I install this thing? Probably System Info, actually. Let's just do that. System Info. Come on, pull me some info. Original build install date was 6/28. So we've been going for about a couple months. But the whole point of Windows for me is when I look at this, a lot of times when I set it up after getting rid of all the crap that can go wrong with it, because, you know, there's a lot of nuance to Windows. And you could also say it's a skill issue when Windows breaks. Setting up reliable updates, making sure you're not grabbing the latest feature update, those types of things. All that is more skill-oriented. Much like when I'm in Linux, breaking this is a skill issue. Everything's a skill issue, really, at the end of the day. I don't know how else to say it. But for me, I break Linux way more than I break Windows. OEM's messing things up. Yeah, but Linux is not perfect in this regard. I have some regressions with certain updates. When we look at this, let's just do a system update while we're here. It's been a while since we did a system update on stream. Only a couple of gigs today. Oh, what are we grabbing? Oh, new NVIDIA drivers. And is there a new Linux kernel? Please tell me there's a new Linux kernel. I've had a regression in my Linux kernels where my suspend stopped working. Imagine that. Linux has problems with suspend, sometimes sound issues as well. And Pipewire. I don't think I'm actually using Pipewire. I thought we were using Pulse. Yeah, maybe not. All right, well, let's just update. Are these bleeding edge? Nah, everything's LTS. So it should be fine. So this is NVIDIA LTS as well. Yeah, I have a ton of Hackintosh experience. Yeah, and even still on the LTS kernel, and this, again, is going to make some Linux guys mad. I've had regressions even on LTS where I used to be able to suspend my system, and then, here, we'll do it real fast after. We'll do a reboot, and then we'll do a suspend. Oh, sweet, we're upgrading our DaVinci Resolve to 19. So this might take a little bit longer for the install, but I do like it. Probably ask questions a lot, but I'm still watching all the videos and was wondering, why are you still on Arch? What is a better than NixOS in your use case? Arch gives me the capabilities to be really flexible and try pretty much anything and everything. Nix is probably great for replicating a system setup, and I do love everything being in a configuration file. However, when it comes to like PCI pass-through and many of those settings, NixOS can be a bit of a headache to do. So I guess that's why I don't roll Nix all the time. I still have my Nix config, and I do like it. It's just not the best for my use case, but definitely in my top 5 all-time distros. And also, even though I sat here and said, hey, Linux isn't as stable as I want it to be, Arch has gotten a lot better. I don't know if y'all have been keeping up, but Arch has really upped their game in the past year or two. So maybe some of the Arch people in the crowd can speak to this, but when we Alacrity, can we not launch that? Oh, huh. I guess we're gonna have to wait on this. But I've been going on this roughly 4 or 5 months now, and I haven't broken it, which is like a record for me because I usually can break things pretty easily, especially in Arch, judging by my personal history here. And I don't know what's happened in the past year or two, but Arch has gotten really, really good. So something's happened because I haven't gotten any more. I mean, I'm always breaking something. And yet, here we are on Arch. Now, having said that, we are doing a system update. And we'll reboot and see if I break it. Probably after going on this rant, it will break on me. But me not breaking it for 5 months is a miracle. And yeah, I'm using AUR. I'm using other stuff. And it's gotten a lot better. Is Resolve stable on Linux? Yeah, it is. It is stable. I'm actually using it in Arch. I don't know if I'd recommend this because there's a lot of nuance to it, which I kind of went on a little bit earlier, but also I think Pipewire doesn't work in the Arch DaVinci Resolve. There's some other nuance to it. So if you're like a professional video editor and you want to use Resolve strictly in Linux, I probably would recommend Rocky Linux. That's what it's really designed for. Best desktop Linux for a starter or beginner. Bloody Spike. I've thought long and hard about this. What is the best Linux distro? Are you ready for it? Are you ready for the Linux distro I'd recommend? No, it's not Mint. Mint is my old one. I think I recommend Bazzite to anybody new. I think I would just say Bazzite. If you are completely new, I feel like this is the best experience I've had from a new user perspective. It's really hard to break. I mean, I still broke it, but it's really hard to break. And I think this for new users would yield much more adoption of Linux. And I was super impressed with it. Even though I hate Fedora, I still loved the distro. And they did so good at it. So for me, for a brand new user that's just coming over into Linux, I don't want you to break your system. I want you to have a good gaming experience out of the box with not much configuration. I want you to be able to install apps without screwing your system up. This is the hardest to break. This is probably the most tightest proof distro out there, is what I would say. I had a hard time breaking it, and it's very easy for new users, where almost all Arch-based distros, even Debian-based distros, there's plenty of configurations that you end up getting into trouble, where this one, you just kind of circumvent all that because of the atomic system that it's built on. It's not light, it's not the most performant, but gosh darn it, it probably works the best out of the box and gives the best new user experience out of any Linux desktop out there. But it is KDE based. There's not much expression that you can put into this one. You want to try a whole brand new tiling window manager. You want to completely tinker and go wild. This isn't for you. So this is a noob distro. For a new user, this is it. If you haven't installed Bazzite as a brand new Linux user, well, go install it, because it's gonna treat you right. It's gonna retreat you the best out of it, I think, any of them. Arch-based, man, for a brand new user, I will never recommend Arch for a brand new user. iDeneb or iAtcos. I'm not sure on that, Den. What is that? Oh, Hackintosh ISOs. Oh, archive.org. Pirate's Dream. Yeah, you don't want to be using that. OpenCore, man. If you're gonna go that way, you need to be doing some OpenCore. Don't be trying some jank, virus-ridden Hackintosh type business. If you're gonna go with a Hackintosh, learn OpenCore. Learn it, love it. This is the only way. But your time's limited, because it's only a matter of time before old Mac OS is only compatible with ARM devices, specifically M chips, and they lock out the entire Hackintosh community, effectively killing Hackintosh. So you're on borrowed time, my friend, no matter what you choose. OpenCore is not for legacy. iDeneb is Leopard. You really want to go that far back in time? You're insane. Leopard is so old. Yeah, but if you do want a Hackintosh, OpenCore is awesome. Yeah, and that's funny. Like Theo 3G, he ended up using Hackintoshes, and that was like his gateway drug, which is kind of funny. I honestly love that video by Theo. It was so cool to see someone vocalize all that and how he ended up on Mac, which is funny. Even though I don't agree with a lot of his Linux positions. But that's okay. I mean, it was kind of cool that he had that experience, though. It was surprising to me. All right. So, did we finish this? Oh, we're still working on that install here. What about Ubuntu? Is that any good? No, Ubuntu sucks. Don't use Ubuntu. It's awful. It's like a fork of Debian. It uses snap packs. It's ungodly slow. If you go back in time like 5-6 years, I would have a whole different thing to say about Ubuntu. I think Ubuntu is great. Like Ubuntu 18, I actually enjoyed. It was not bad. But starting with Ubuntu 20 and stuff, it's just gone downhill every single release. It's hot garbage now. Ubuntu is fine. Chris is just angry. Somebody's got a little copium going on. No, Ubuntu's trash. You guys stop it. Stop it. There's no way Ubuntu's any good. You aren't. It is. It's very bad smelling garbage. Oh, no, but yeah, no. What about Kubuntu? Yeah, actually, Kubuntu makes some changes, but the thing I don't like about a lot of the derivatives of Ubuntu is they pushed out a change basically taking Flatpak out and forcing snaps on most of the derivatives of it. Having said that, you can fix it. I still like Kubuntu, but I don't recommend it to folks a lot of times because of the changes that need to be made. I like to disable snaps, enable Flatpaks, which you can do. It's just not a great starting point for a brand new user unless changes are made. I'm still a little salty from Ubuntu forcing everyone to strip out Flatpaks and bundle snap. It was a complete a-hole move. You made a video about Ubuntu is the best. Maybe look at that again. I don't think I've ever said Ubuntu is the best. Actually, one of my very first viral videos. I'm going to actually push back on this one. I actually privated this video. Maybe I don't maybe I unprivate. Oh God, it was cringe. I'll show you guys. We'll dive into the depths of the YouTubes. We're gonna switch the main channel. Back when I actually made videos on YouTube. Back in my day. All right, here we go. We're gonna go Ubuntu. What Ubuntu videos have I made? Oh yeah, I was trolling people in 2022. We're switching to Ubuntu, looking at that at face value. That's some clickbait. Good job, Chris. Ubuntu ARM server is good. It's actually not bad. Like, so the Ubuntu server is not too bad when you strip out some stuff. I agree with that. Like, you can disable Snapd like I was doing in this video, just showcasing its server ability. Ubuntu server's decent. Not good, not bad. Middle of the road. I don't ever like, oh, I got to uninstall Ubuntu server and re-implement something else when I run into it in the wild. I usually go, okay, Ubuntu server, whatever. Let's strip out Snapd, disable that, and then install what I need. Ubuntu's decline. This is when they did like the really slow flat pack thing. This was also 2022. So you can kind of see most of these all revolve around snaps and how they suck, but you can disable snaps and it's still decent. I don't know if they'll keep pushing snaps or not. And let's see. I don't know what this was. Overexposed video of trash. I put it on members only, probably because it was a crap video. Winbuntu. That's when I did like a GUI using WSL because Ubuntu's kind of partnered with Windows, and it actually is not that bad altogether. My Ubuntu 20 distribution is awesome. So this is most of these videos, if you just look them at a face value and you don't actually watch the video, you might think I actually like Ubuntu. But a lot of it is just me going in and stripping out and really customizing the hell out of Ubuntu to make it not suck as bad. 4 reasons why I don't like Ubuntu. That probably holds up today. And then there's that. This right here, you may notice, got over 500,000 views. My most viewed Ubuntu video of all time. I privated this many years ago. But why Ubuntu is the devil and why so many no longer use it. This was actually from 2019. So this was almost 5 years ago today. I did private this because I didn't think it was a particularly good video. But, oh, man, I still stand by it. I still think it's a good video, and I think I just put it as members only, didn't I? Yeah, that's a members only video. So a lot of the videos where, like, I took too long or there's too much fluff in it, I just put them as members only. So if you ever want to see some of the videos I've privated, or let's say you make it through all 1,000 videos that are public on my channel, if you subscribe to the membership, you get like another 100 or 200 videos of stuff that was like, yeah, I'm just going to put that in members only. So I never really private a video, but I do have several that are members only. Which OS do you love more, RHEL or Ubuntu? That's a trolley problem right there. RHEL or Ubuntu? Yeah, RHEL. Yeah, RHEL's just better in every way. It's what I learned on too. And it has the best server setup out of anybody. Most secure in the Linux realm. It's just very good. I don't like saying that out loud. So anyways, that's my Ubuntu videos. I don't think I've ever was like, hey, Ubuntu's amazing. Like, even this is like some of the very first videos I ever made on the channel. 9 tips for installing Ubuntu. Oh, those early days. God bless them. How's our install doing? Still installing. Oh no, we're on Thorium now. We got a Thorium update. All right. I think someone mentioned in a past stream like the Thorium AUR broke, so it looks like that actually got fixed, judging by this. Yeah, no. I can see why people still love Ubuntu. It's what they know. It's just like the people that just absolutely love Windows still. It's what they know. I will say Ubuntu made me reinstall Windows after using it for a week. Oh man, that still happens in 2024. That's funny. I mean, I laugh because that was me. When I first installed Ubuntu Desktop, I used it for like a week and then I was like, yeah, I'm going back to Windows. That's why I recommend Bazzite, because I feel like me from 10 years ago when I first tried like Ubuntu Desktop at a whim, I think I was still gaming a bunch, and Bazzite has just such a better setup out of the gate for most gamers. It's just so much fun. So that's why I always recommend Bazzite. I just is so much more noob friendly. Oh, okay. You have a challenge for me? Let me guess. Linux from scratch. That's usually what chat does. Linux from scratch or Gentoo. Hopefully you're a little more original than that, but we'll see. What's the challenge, Den? We'll see what that is. Any thoughts on CatchyOS? Nah, it's an Arch fork. Need to try it. Gentoo from scratch. It's actually not that bad. Gentoo has binaries now. Make a custom BIOS for your motherboard. Actually, I looked into it, Den. So you can actually flash your BIOS using, LibreBoot. LibreBoot. This is such a cool project. So LibreBoot, you can actually boot your system in like 1 second. There's also Coreboot too, which is neat. But LibreBoot's the one I was looking at and seeing if you can get your hands on a laptop. We tried to on stream actually do this a while back. I want to say 6 months ago. And we failed miserably. I had a old ThinkPad, not necessarily the exact model needed to load LibreBoot on, sadly. This looks so shady. God bless. That is old as hell. Ugh. T440p. Wait a second. We got us a ThinkPad here. What do we got? This is a T440. Not a P though. So close. But a ThinkPad 440, T440, that's actually pretty close, but I think it doesn't work with LibreBoot when I tried it. I do want to try something like that. It's just the classic T440. Neat though. Yeah. It happens. Yeah, you got to get the P. That's the professional edition. Has a little bit different firmware and it's easier to format or load it. I think I got rid of the device I was using to do that. Custom BIOS from scratch is the challenge. Oh, that's true. That'd be fun. I don't even know where to start on that, Den. That is truly a challenge, though. Well, hit me up. I'll send you this ThinkPad. I'm not doing anything with it, and I probably need to get rid of it. I've been on a clean out mode, trying to get rid of everything. All in assembly. What makes you think I got the skills to do that? I can barely write in C, much less assembly code. It's hilarious. But I mean, I love the idea of it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's an amazing challenge. How much you want for that ThinkPad? $20. And you pay shipping. I'll send it to you. As long as you're in the States. I'm not shipping overseas. My goodness. Going through customs is a pain in the butt. Because of battery. You can't ship lithium-ion batteries through customs. They freak out. It's a whole thing. Don't tell me how I know that. Oh, okay. Oh, you're going to Oklahoma? Yeah, Kang. Just hit me up. contact@christitus.com. I'll send it to you. Nice. Let's see. All right. So, yeah, that's interesting. And then there's Coreboot, too. What's Coreboot? I wonder, do they have instructions on that? Because sometimes they have, let's say for end users. I know, didn't System76 use Coreboot? eBay, you gotta pay crap. It's like, meh, I'll just run it down to ups. It's fine. I have another challenge, Titus. A great challenge. Oh, God. All right, let's hear it. Let's hear it. I'm up for challenges. Yeah, Coreboot, because I want to say System76 uses Coreboot, doesn't it? So, yeah, they do a pretty good job. So, Open Firmware, Open RC. You can go with like main Bazzite for 2 months. Yeah, we did a Bazzite main on this system for about 2 months. It was fun. Make your own kernel distro, compile DWM. Yeah, that's like a Linux from scratch type situation. Ain't nobody got time for that. Yeah, so this is core boot and open firmware. And I want to say, yeah, so you can do core boot, EDK, and then those firmware apps. Pretty cool. I always thought System 76 was neat for this. How they support this type of stuff is kind of insane. I would probably, let's see, what do they have? Probably like the Adder WS. What is that? Bono WS. What is that? Oh, that's a laptop. Kind of curious. What do they even sell now? What does their desktops look like? These Stelios. It's so expensive. Yeah, and I don't think those Stelios have the open firmware. So I don't think they're really doing much there. Yeah, it's just Thelio. Anywho, yeah, thought I'd take a trip there. Linux from scratch, but no Linux. Yeah, the Dev 1, Ashland. I think they stopped making it, though. A lack thing. Yeah, so I think the HP Dev 1 stopped production. Let me see. Yeah, it's sold out. Support is still available. This is a really cool idea from HP, but they don't really support it at all anymore. I thought about getting it when it came out, but then I was like, I don't know about that. I don't trust HP, rightfully so, when it comes to some long-term support of a Linux anything. It's going to be a dice roll. But neat that they actually attempted it. Yeah, HP support's not the best these days. Not that it ever was that great, but I couldn't imagine what it is in 2024. Yeah, we got the Elite Wolf on our side, though. Wolf protects me. I'm sleep well at night. All right, guys, I think I'm going to shut it down for today. I know I didn't get to much programming or anything today. It was more of a, hey, let's just take a trip, BS a little bit today. After the rough stream yesterday, I think we'll pick up the programming for Thursday's stream, get it going. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and we'll address all that. I think we'll have a good time with it. Let me know on a lot of that, whether or not what we want to do. It was more of a yapping stream. Yeah, that's pretty much all of today. It was just yapping. Me just blah, 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 blah. Not getting anything done except hitting the stream button. It'll make for a good video to rewatch, I think. I think I don't want to like overdo the programming stream, so I was like, yeah, you know what? Let's just put together like an old school YouTube video format for a stream. Go through like work history and OS history, and then throw it up. I think that'd be fun. Oh, and we never did. How's this? Oh, before we go, let's reboot and make sure that we didn't break Arch. That's probably important. Oh, I probably should have shut down my VM. I do have an auto shutdown script that gets run to shut down the VM gracefully, so it shouldn't time out. Yeah, we're about to actually shut it down, Melted Jedi. Appreciate you stopping in. A little short stream today. Yeah, but let's see. I talked up Arch a bunch in this stream saying, hey, you can't break Arch. And I thought, each stream I'm just going to do a system update. See how it goes. We did update our NVIDIA driver. We did update the Linux kernel. And here comes the moment of truth. Did I break it? Either way, I ain't got enough time to finish. So let's see how the system ends up at the finale of the stream. The glorious system. Does it boot? It is taking a little longer to show up. Yeah, we're good. It was like, well, okay, yeah, we're fine. We're fine. Let's see, let's pick a good wallpaper. I like the jellyfish astronaut. That's nice. Feels good. You're still here? Oh, I forgot to end this. That's right. Anyways, I'll see y'all on Thursday. Have a fantastic evening, and we'll do some programming on Thursday's stream, do some PRs. I'm going to probably try and get to some of those off hours. So maybe I'll do like a summary. I'm going to try something new for Thursday, something that you haven't seen. That, and I'm afraid I'm going to break something when I do a refactor on stream. So Thursday, I'll have a laundry list of things ready to go. Where you'll be like, dang, you've been busy, Titus. And I'll be like, yes, I have. I say that out loud just so I hold myself to that. So I make sure to do a bunch of work between now and Thursday afternoon. All right. Peace all.